Hello and welcome to the panel on self-care. My name is Eileen O'Neill. I'm a member of the steering committee for Empowering Women in Industry, and I'm also a founder of Water Principles LLC, and I'm really delighted and honored to be here with a distinguished group of panelists to talk on such an important topic. I'm going to introduce them just with name and affiliation, but if you check on the app, there's lots of information there on their background. So just in alphabetical order, we're very honored to have with us Khaliah Guillory, the founder of NAPBAR. Welcome, Khaliah. We also have Jackie Henderson from the Safe Soul Center. Thanks very much for participating, Jackie. We have Lauren McClerkin from Conscious Strong. Welcome, Lauren. And we have Becca Mechtensteimer from Empowering Pumps to join us. And then finally, last but by no means least, we have Beate Wright, an engineer from Carollo Engineers, Inc. We also are aware that you are an important part of this session, so we encourage you to interact with us during the session and potentially follow up. As I thought about this session, I realized that we'd have people in the audience who really understand the impact that self-care can have and who are using these practices on a daily basis. And I hope that we can perhaps further energize and inspire you in those practices. But also thought, reflecting on my background, that perhaps there are plenty in the audience who have not yet taken advantage and focused on self-care. I thought there are probably many in the audience who perhaps of my generation, but come from a generation or a culture or are working in an environment where we feel pressure to work hard, to put those shoulders to the wheel, to put in those hours. And thinking about women also shouldering perhaps more of the burden in the home life. I bet we have mothers here, maybe some single mothers. We probably have people who are also dealing with maybe elder care or other challenges that are taking one's time. And that perhaps under these circumstances, when the term self-care comes up, perhaps it might even seem frivolous, or maybe a marketing term, or just something that, while valuable, might not just seem for us in this position. And I certainly bring those thoughts as someone who's at a different point in her career than many of you, having stood down within the last year from a chief executive position, and had a little bit of opportunity to reflect on that and to think about how we as women very often are not able, don't feel empowered to take the time to focus on our personal health, mental, physical, and our overall well-being. And thinking also that if we did that, we would be able to show up better in those various different spaces and roles that we're called upon to do. So I hope for those of you that have not yet incorporated self-care into your life, that this high-level panel gives you some inspiration and potentially some tips. So without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to the panel. I asked them to focus on some 2 or 3 areas, why they feel that self-care is important, what impacts have they seen from themselves or clients in terms of having a focus on self-care, and are there any practices they particularly highlight? And I'm going to ask Becca to weigh in first.
Thank you, Eileen. So I'm Becca, and so to kind of start off the questions that Eileen gave for self-care, it's really important for me because of my desire to grow and be better. So when I was younger, I didn't really understand self-care and the need for it, but whenever I graduated college, I was just feeling very stuck and didn't know what direction I needed to go in. So that's really when I kind of started implementing self-care practices to help figure that out and move the needle for me and figure out that next step. So being able to have that like little dip into self-care really helped catapult me to where I am now. And so as an, well, I was an adult then, but as more of an adult now, I was able to really look into it and research it and figure out what exactly it meant. And for me, it's really about awareness and figuring out the things that you need to do for yourself that are going to help you get to where you want to grow. So personally, mental health is a big thing for me with self-care. So I struggle with anxiety and some mild depression. So I've really used that to help my mental state and to really just be happy and healthy and have that good headspace. And so some of the things that I do for that is I go to therapy, I journal. That's a big one for me, is really just writing out my thoughts and just kind of working through those hard things that I'm feeling. So it's always been important to me as I've gotten older, and continues to be more important for me to make sure that I'm moving ahead and growing and becoming who I want to be.
So throughout my career, I periodically ask myself, am I happy? Everybody has their own things that fills their happiness bucket. And as we go through life, the proportions of those things and the types of those things that fill their bucket change. When something doesn't feel right in my life, I feel it in my gut. And I listen to it, I trust it, and I try to figure out, well, what is bothering me and what can I do about it? So I recently have gone through a very empowering experience when changing jobs. I was in an environment that wasn't right for me. It wasn't healthy, and it took me a while to realize it. What helped me see that I wasn't being true to who I am and my professional integrity, really what makes me tick in that environment, was when I invested in talking to an executive coach. I felt a bit stuck. I needed to spend some time. I felt looking and securing that next job and that next company. And she told me, no, that's old school thinking. She goes, actually, step into your executive presence and the universe will open up to you. And that's exactly what happened to me. Once I left that toxic environment, I was lucky that I had the means to do so. I was able to give myself the gift of time and to be my best self when I was opening up to what is that next opportunity. I executed the transition with grace and professionalism, which only strengthened my position. So I was really fortunate to consider multiple offers that I don't think I would have had if I didn't take that step. And I ended up with a company in a position that embodied everything that I was looking for. So the closing thoughts to this journey was to know your worth. Stay true to your professional integrity, who you are and how you are. You're never stuck. There's always things, there's things that we can't control in everything when it comes to addressing your situation. So there's always things that happen, like good old politics or your supervisor, corporate culture. So I always look at that as like, number one, what can I do to help myself? And I do that. And then once I've done everything I felt I could do, then I ask myself, okay, can I live with this? Will it work? And if I feel good and I can live with it and I see that it's going to work, that's good. But if I can't and I'm not happy, there's something wrong, then it's time for me to make a change. And then I make that change. So you always have choices, whether it's having a transparent conversation with your supervisor or building up a class or course resume to build your skill sets, updating your resume, using your network, or removing yourself from a situation if you have the means to do so. So know your worth and you're never stuck.
For me, when I was working in corporate America, I'm a former C-level executive at a Fortune 500 company. I found myself working 80 plus hours a week. I was traveling 75% of the time, and I was sleep deprived. I was beyond exhausted. I'm like many Americans that are plagued with being tired and exhausted today. And one of the things that I got really clear on is that for me, working in financial services, self-care is often a dirty word. It's a bad word because you go from one thing to the next, and it's never time for you to pause, taking mental breaks and taking time off. I found myself on Wednesdays once a month calling out and scheduling a vacation day just so I can catch up on much needed sleep. I wasn't going anywhere fun. I was in my bed the entire day. And I thought one day, this is not what life is about. And for me, self-care was beyond getting my hair done, getting my nails done. Don't get me wrong, those are important, but I still was sleep deprived. I still was exhausted. I still was going to the gym. I was doing yoga. I was doing all the things that we're told to do from a self-care perspective, but I still was exhausted. Until one day I woke up. I was commuting in from the city. I live in Houston, and my then wife and I were carpooling into the city, and it was around nap time. Now, if you know me, you know that I've been an avid napper since kindergarten, meaning that when they told me to go, it was nap time, I went and got my red and blue mat. I went to my spot, and that was it. I was out. No one had to play with me or force me to lay down. And I've been an avid napper ever since, even through college, even as a professional. And when I was traveling, I often found myself taking these uncomfortable naps in the blue chair in the airport, in a hot car in the garage, or anywhere I could find in an unused conference room. And finally, one day, my then wife said, it was nap time, and I looked at her and I said, man, it's nap time, but you're in the car with me because we're carpooling. I don't know what to do. And she said, well, Google naps in Houston. Surely there's a place for you to go and take a snooze. This is Houston. It's the 4th largest city in the entire country. Well, a minute later, Eileen, I realized nothing existed. Nothing really existed in the entire country, except for in Europe. I couldn't get to Europe. And she looked at me and said, well, maybe you should create it. And that was April of 2018. I then started my strategy to transition away and pivot away from corporate America. I retired and started Nap Bar. And the reason why I started Nap Bar, simply put, is because selfishly, I was tired of taking naps in my car. And like many other Americans, I did what most people do whenever you're unsure about something. I went to Facebook and I surveyed my friends and said, hey, am I the only one that's taking a nap that's an adult during the day? And 99.9% of my friends on Facebook said no. And I said, okay, well, I might be onto something here. Well, would you pay to take a nap or a snooze in a rest sanctuary? Yes. Okay, well, how much would you pay for this? And literally, I created a business model based on the masses' feedback to solve a $411 billion US economic loss due to sleep deprivation. So that's really my why. And what I've come to realize is that it looks different for everyone. But for me, my self-care includes incorporating a daily nap. I take a nap every single day. Well, I plan to take a nap every single day. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But the key is that I plan it. I plan for it. And as a result, the benefits, Eileen, has been astronomical. I no longer have the normal brain fog that I have grown to be normal. I can think clearly. I can solve a problem in a heartbeat without having to spend a ton of hours on it because I'm just exhausted mentally. From a research standpoint, NASA conducted a study on sleepy military pilots and astronauts and found that a 26-minute nap increased their productivity by up to 34% and alertness by 54%. Like, who wouldn't want to be more productive and have more alertness in a 26-minute nap? I haven't met anyone that said they wouldn't. And so there lies my mission and my purpose. I'm beyond oozing with gratitude because every single day I have the opportunity to create these rest sanctuaries for us to revolutionize and redefine what self-care looks like for us and give ourselves permission to do so.
Thank you, Khaliah. You know, we're seeing as the panel talks that both the personal stories of, you know, being on that treadmill, and I think perhaps what you said, Khaliah, about naps, people taking naps in Europe. I think in the States, we have this culture, the badge of honor, the badge of being busy, someone once said to me.
You know, and that's the terrible thing about it, Eileen, is that we have to reverse engineer our mind process and our thought process is that, hey, actually, you're not lazy if you take a nap in the middle of the day. They've been doing this for decades across the pond, and then look at their productivity. Look at what they have been able to accomplish. And at least for me, I mean, when I figured out that naps can also regulate your weight, I don't know about you guys, but I put on a COVID-5. I've got 5 pounds that I've been snacking and napping. And in my brain, I've been telling myself, well, if you take more naps, then you'll be able to drop these 5 pounds from COVID. So, I mean, if I don't take away from anything else other than that, it regulates our weight, y'all. So go and take you a nap.
I want to go take a nap now. I know, that's funny because my father used to come home and take a nap at lunchtime every every day. I just found that interesting, and you don't see that anymore today. So yeah, so thank you, Khaliah. I'm gonna start taking naps. So yes, I definitely do can share just thanks, ladies, for all that you're sharing, because it is so true. And Eileen, you opened up about children, and that some of you out there are probably struggling that weighing, and that is what led me to my self-care push, I would say. At the time, this is about 18 years ago, I had 5 little kids running around me, and had my own business with my husband, and life was just absolutely crazy. And I felt it. I was feeling run down. I was feeling stressed. I was feeling super anxious. And I always took care of myself, meaning I would exercise, but that's not really, it wasn't self-care yet. And then I found Pilates, which I walked into my first Pilates class, and it was, for me, it was something instant. You know, it was, I want more of that. And what I was needing was finding something very grounding. And just like all of the other ladies have said so beautifully, is that finding a practice that you can connect to, that whether it is journaling, whether it is yoga, or even taking a nap and being able to meditate, is finding that time for yourself. But I remember feeling guilty. I remember my husband telling me at the time, you should be doing this, you know, we have so many things to do. And I made myself go do it. Otherwise, I knew I would be trajecting down a probably not so healthy path. And that was coming with anxiety and depression, maybe drinking another glass of wine instead of doing something healthy, and making choices. So it is, you know, my discovery came through Pilates, and then I founded Conscious Strong. And Conscious Strong is came from then my passion and my research from expressive writing, which is journaling, and I incorporate a lot of that in my practice with my clients, and meditation, and then adding the movement component to help move through those stressful times, because it does scientifically work. It helps alleviate the stress and anxiety that we're all experiencing, and especially in times like this. So yes, mine came through wanting to find, I wanted to be a better mother. I wanted to be a better partner. And I realized that I was not, because I was so exhausted and I was stressed out every day. But once I found that I took that time, the guilt started diminishing. I started to ground myself, and then it just has become a way of life. So yeah, I feel very grateful.
I'm really happy to be here and share my perspective on self-care as a mental health professional. I'm a mental health counselor, holistic approach, body-centered work, and the idea of self-care in the holistic world, it has to be non-negotiable. You know, so I'm listening to everyone share their journaling and their napping and their getting their coaching and doing the Pilates, all the exercise. That needs to be scheduled into our day first. Right? That has to be somewhere in the schedule that's non-negotiable, and then we put our rest of our world around that, and that will help us to stay grounded. And I think about COVID, and we've all been quarantined for so long, and thinking about who's getting sick and who's not getting sick, and the immune system, boosting our immune system, whether, you know, you're getting enough sleep, getting enough water, taking herbal supplements, vitamin D, vitamin C, exercise. How are you taking care of yourself so you can boost your immune system so we can be our best versions of ourselves? And then including the mental health piece, because I'm a firm believer in garbage in, garbage out, right? So if you're putting good things into your mind, good podcasts, books, the coaching, getting really positive people, surrounding yourself with good people that are thriving and have the same belief systems. So that's kind of filling the mind with good things, and then the body's getting stronger by boosting the immune system. You have an overall package where you become the best version of yourself. And then you can face all those stressors a little bit easier. And a few years back, I had an herbalist, my own herbalist said to me, she goes, I needed to reset my clock, my internal clock. And I'm like a vampire, I'd like to stay up really late. But she taught me to go to bed a little bit earlier and get up a little earlier. And then when I got up a little earlier, I had the time to do all those practices, right? To do to stretch, to journal, to meditate, to do whatever it is that I needed to do to ground myself, so I can face the world, because we have so much stress and so much, you know, even in the conflicts of all the racial tensions that are going on, if we can really take care of our minds and our bodies, we'd be better listeners, better learners, better sharers, and be more tolerant and accepting. So the whole self-care thing goes really far into just our culture and what our country and our world needs right now.
I'd like to pick up on that, the idea of getting started when you're already feeling overwhelmed and you've got people placing demands on you. I'd like to kind of think about, you know, getting started and setting some boundaries to be able to make that time for yourself. I can see you're nodding, Khaliah. Do you have any thoughts on that? And then I'll come to you, Becca.
Yeah, I think it ties nicely into what Jackie mentioned, is that we just have to commit to doing it and scheduling it. I know for me, I committed to doing it, but then stuff will happen. Something's always going to happen. Life is going to happen. And for me, if it's on the calendar, there's a 99% chance that it will likely happen. But if it's not, then it probably won't happen. So making sure that things are being scheduled, and also giving myself, I found I need to give myself grace and also give myself permission to know that it's not going to be perfect, and I have to put my oxygen mask on first before I can help anyone else. So if I'm no good for Khaliah, Khaliah won't be able to be no good for anyone else. And I think that's the biggest piece of it, and especially from a mental health standpoint. I like Rebecca, I stand with my sister there, that, you know, I also too, I overcome mild depression, and being sure that I stick to my rituals. I stick to the first thing I do in the morning is my rituals, and making sure that I'm visualizing what I want my day to look like, and listening to my guided meditation, and just being quiet before I check my phone. I don't sleep with my phone, for one. I stopped doing that in 2017 because I made a commitment that I was going to be more. Phone is always plugged in the bathroom, and I have to purposely, intentionally wake up to go or get up out the bed to turn off the alarm clock. But I'm not grabbing it first thing in the morning because it's on my nightstand and checking email. The first thing I'm doing is putting on my armor and putting on my rituals and doing my guided meditation. So perhaps that's something that, you know, for those in the audience that they're thinking like, where can I start? Maybe just start by not sleeping with your phone. And maybe start by, you know, committing 5 minutes just to right now journaling a gratitude list. What's on your heart that you're grateful for first thing in the morning? Just let it pour out, and then the next week maybe move it to 8 minutes.
So Khaliah talked to us about giving yourself some space, not expecting to be perfect. And I love the idea of putting it on the calendar, making sure, and that daily practice. I think I've heard you talk about saying no. I'm just wondering if you've got any tips on kind of setting boundaries with people so that you can make that space and time for yourself.
For me, it was always very hard to make that time. I'd be like, oh, this is when I'm going to do it. But then if something would come up for work, then I'd be like, I would just push what I did was doing for my self-care till later, to a different time. And it wasn't working. So I had to kind of train myself to start saying no and putting myself as that priority. So when it's, you know, for example, I do get up early to do some of my self-care practices first thing in the morning before I start my day. But then I also have a break in the afternoon that I work out. And so that's kind of like my active time. And that was really what would kind of get pushed. First thing in the morning wasn't as hard because I would get up early to do it. But later in the day, things always came up. And so really I just had to start saying no and say, you know, if someone called me for work, I wouldn't answer it, and just prioritizing myself and answering it later when I was done. And that was very hard to do. But it's necessary. It's necessary for us to choose ourselves and to be doing those practices that we know that we need to be doing to help with all aspects of our lives. So whether that's mental health, physical health, our needs, all of it. And so really saying, you know what, this is a priority. And so no, I'm not going to answer that email or take this phone call while I'm doing this practice, and I'll address it later. So it is very important to do that. but it is easier said than done. And it's still a work in progress. For me, I know, but it is important and to be able to try to carve out those times and then stick to those times.
Jackie, do you have any thoughts there? I know for me, that will be difficult as sort of a type A, high achiever, particularly in a work environment. And then, you know, being a mother, I think we all have that sort of want to give endlessly. Any thoughts as a therapist about setting boundaries and resetting to make that time and space?
Well, I think the setting boundaries is really important. Like saying no is really huge, and putting it on the calendar is really huge. But I also find it's important throughout the day to practice the pause. I don't know if anyone's heard that before, but where you just, when you are sitting at your desk and you're so busy and people eat lunch at their desk, just putting like a placemat under your lunch so you realize that your brain realizes this is my pause for lunch, I'm taking care of myself. Or just sitting with that coffee a little bit longer and enjoying it, slowing down. Just really, I think what our culture really needs is to slow down a little bit. So when there's a moment in the day that you get some really good feedback, just be like, you know, just take it in. An extra 30 seconds just to take something in could really reset the nervous system.
Yeah, very, very helpful. I think that, as Becca said, that learning to say no, and I think it can feel very empowering once you practice that. And it seems like your pause is somewhat like Khaliah's nap.
Oh, the pause, yeah. So the pause would be like even just 30 seconds, you know, where you just, you know, take in the moment, take in good feedback, take in just lunchtime, like your favorite food. And it just slows you down a little bit so you can really just enjoy the moment, because, you know, life is all about the little moments, right? It's like those little moments add up to major moments. So if we don't slow down and appreciate them, we miss them. And then we just stay busy. But I'm sure there's times during your day where you have a great conversation with somebody, or you get some great feedback, or you just have the best cappuccino of your life, those types of things. And you just like, just appreciate it. Take 30 seconds extra to appreciate it, and you'll notice a huge difference on your nervous system. I even tell people, if you want to reduce the stress in your life, slow down at the yellow light. How many people like fly through the yellow light these days? Like it's supposed to speed up, but you're supposed to slow down, right? So we need to slow down a little bit and really take in just the really, I mean, I call them the ordinary moments that lead to extraordinary just feelings in the body, you know.
To add on to what Jackie said, kind of our culture, definitely in the United States, like we're kind of raised so that we like always need to be like, we always need to hustle. Like we always have to be working hard, and a lot of the time we end up overworking ourselves, and to take those breaks, those pauses is very important, even if it's just a short 30 seconds. But we really do need to slow down and take a breath. Like mine is, you know, pause, mine's the breath. Like when I'm getting too overwhelmed, I'm like, breathe, Becca. And I take that moment. It really does help to just slow you down a little bit and just ease that tension. And so, you know, we do need to kind of be thinking a little differently. And it's hard to do that, but to change our mindset where we don't have to be hustling all the time. We don't need to always be working hard. We can still do a great job and do the things that we want to do and accomplish the things we want to accomplish while still being more easy with ourselves and our bodies.
I think the universe gave us a giant pause with COVID. You know, we were all forced into a month, 3 month, 4 month pause. And, you know, most of us stayed productive. We got creative, and we realized we didn't have to do so much to be productive, right? So we really, I think the universe is telling us to slow down also.
Yeah, no, this was also beautiful what everybody was saying, because I am definitely, that has been, you know, just the practice of, you know, what I share with my clients is that you do definitely have to slow down. Also try not to get to the end first. Try to know that you're going to have to take little steps. and always use the analogy of you're not going to, you know, throw on your sneakers and go run your first marathon if you've never run. And I think in our culture that we are so pushed to drive and go try and go hard and fast. And you don't have to go hard and fast in order to find self-care and to actually nourish your mind and body better. And so that is my message. And during this time, there are so many free classes online now. And I tell all of my friends and my clients to go explore it and try all different modalities, because there are so many amazing classes out there right now that you can try, and a lot are for free. But just go easy and go easy on yourself, but you do have to schedule it. So I agree with all of that, is that you do have to put it on the calendar, at least try to, and that will help you get motivated to want to try to bring self-care into your life, because it's so important.
So it used to be, when people were talking about how I reflected about, I used to never have time to exercise and never have time to really take care of myself. And I realized that I was letting time control me, when I was like, wait a minute, I'm in control of my time. I mean, I actually am in control. So it is setting that calendar. It is making those priorities. It is saying, yeah, I'm committed to this and doing it. And you are in control. It's not your time is in control of you, is one thing. And then the other thing with respect to the pause, which I love, is I also look at enjoyment in all the little things. Like I enjoy the little cup of coffee. I enjoy the journey, because if you just wait till like that big vacation, you might not get there for some reason. So enjoy all the little things every day, because it is a blessing, and that fills up your happiness bucket. You know, it makes you feel good.
Thank you very much, everyone, for a terrific discussion.